necessary military assets, including the U.S. Navy.
¡Venga por mí! ¡Aquí lo espero en Miraflores! ¡No se tarde en llegar! ¡Cobarde!
5.600 combatientes, revolucionarios, socialistas y hoy más que...
Let's talk about what's actually happening in Venezuela right now, because this story is unfolding in real time and the implications are massive. On January 2nd, 2026, the United States military launched Operation Absolute Resolve and captured President Nicolás Maduro. More than 150 U.S. Armed Forces aircraft were involved in the operation, bombing infrastructure across northern Venezuela. Maduro was flown to New York City and is now facing criminal charges. But here's what most people aren't paying attention to. Venezuela's military didn't collapse. The regime didn't fall. And right now, as we speak, Venezuela's armed forces are making critical moves that could shape what happens next in this entire region. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez immediately announced that military forces would be deployed across Venezuela, and he called for resistance against what he described as the worst aggression Venezuela has ever faced. They've attacked us, but they will not subdue us, he said. Now, the fascinating thing about Padrino Lopez's statement is that he announced these deployments on Maduro's orders, even though Maduro was already in U.S. custody at that point. Think about what that means. The military is maintaining the fiction that Maduro is still giving orders, which tells you everything you need to know about their strategy here. Within 24 hours of the U.S. operation, Venezuela's Supreme Court ordered Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to assume the presidency. The Venezuelan military announced it would recognize Rodriguez as acting president, and on January 5th, she was officially sworn in by her brother Jorge Rodriguez, who is president of the National Assembly. This is where it gets really interesting. President Trump claimed that Rodriguez had spoken with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and essentially agreed to cooperate with the United States. Trump said she told Rubio, "We'll do whatever you need," and that she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. But that's not what happened at all. In her first public statement, Rodriguez completely contradicted Trump, saying, "There is only one president in this country, and his name is Nicolás Maduro." She called what the U.S. did barbaric and described it as an illegal and illegitimate kidnapping. She demanded Maduro's immediate release and denounced the operation as a violation of the UN Charter. So we have two completely different narratives here. Trump says Venezuela's new leader is cooperating. Venezuela's new leader says the U.S. committed an act of aggression and kidnapped their president. Both can't be true. The military response has been swift and coordinated. The Venezuelan government declared a state of external commotion, effectively a national emergency, on January 3rd. This activation of national defense plans puts both Rodriguez and Padrino Lopez at the center of the response. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello called for calm, but also told people no one should fall into despair, no one should make things easier to our invading enemy. He urged Venezuelans to get out on the streets to defend their country's sovereignty. Now here's what's really significant about the military's position right now. Padrino Lopez, who is not only defense minister, but Venezuela's top-ranking military officer, said that a large part of Maduro's security team were killed during the U.S. operation. He specifically claimed some of Maduro's bodyguards were killed in cold blood. Whether that's true or propaganda, it's clearly designed to galvanize resistance. Padrino Lopez said, "This invasion represents the greatest outrage the country has suffered," and vowed that Venezuela would resist the presence of foreign troops. He announced that the country's armed forces have been activated to guarantee sovereignty. But at the same time, and this is crucial, Padrino Lopez also urged Venezuelan citizens to resume normal activities of all kinds, economic, work, and education, in the coming days. The homeland must follow its constitutional course, he said. So what's the strategy here? They're trying to have it both ways. Resist the U.S. militarily, but also present an image of stability and constitutional legitimacy to the international community. And speaking of the international community, Venezuelan diplomats have requested an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, asking it to condemn what they're calling U.S. aggression. Foreign Minister Ivan Gil accused the U.S. of seeking to take Venezuela's natural resources. And he's not wrong to raise that issue because Trump himself said part of his goal is to get the oil flowing in Venezuela. Padrino Lopez made it explicit. Far from a supposed fight against narco-terrorism, this deplorable action seeks to definitely force a regime change. Again, whether you agree with Venezuela's government or not, they're making a coherent argument that this wasn't about drugs. It was about oil and regime change. Now here's where the story takes another turn. On Sunday night, Rodriguez released a new statement that had a completely different tone. She said Venezuela seeks peace and peaceful coexistence, and that our country aspires to live without external threats, in an environment of respect and international cooperation. She said she hopes to have a balanced and respectful relationship with the U.S. based on sovereign equality and non-interference. She even extended an invitation to the U.S. government to work together on a cooperation agenda oriented to shared development within the framework of international legality. Her message ended with, "President Donald Trump, our peoples and our region deserve peace and dialogue, not war." So within 48 hours, we've seen Venezuela go from calling this a kidnapping and demanding Maduro's release to extending an olive branch and talking about cooperation. That's not a contradiction, that's strategy. They're playing to multiple audiences simultaneously. Domestically, they're presenting themselves as defenders of sovereignty. Internationally, they're presenting themselves as reasonable actors seeking dialogue. The reality on the ground is that the government formerly led by Maduro has remained in place. While Maduro was captured, several of his key allies remain in senior positions. Vladimir Padrino Lopez is still defense minister and top military officer. Diosdado Cabello is still interior minister. These are members of a small circle of senior officials who have maintained control. According to one analysis, this is not regime change and certainly not democratic transition, but a decapitation of the Maduro regime. The analysis notes this is already opening up divisions between the civilian members of the government represented by Delcy Rodriguez and her brother Jorge, and the heads of the security and intelligence forces represented by Cabello and Padrino Lopez. That's the real story here. The Venezuelan military has made its move, but it's not the move anyone expected. They didn't surrender. They didn't collapse. They consolidated power under a new leader who is technically more moderate than Maduro, but still from within the same system. Delcy Rodriguez, according to the New York Times, has earned respect from American officials for her economic record of increasing Venezuela's oil production and stabilizing the economy despite harsher U.S. sanctions. And here's the kicker. According to the Financial Times, Delcy Rodriguez's brother Jorge had held talks with the U.S. government in 2025 to have his sister lead a post-Maduro transitional government. Though those talks had included allowing Maduro to go into exile, not capturing him in a military raid. So was this operation really about bringing democracy to Venezuela? Or was it about accelerating a transition that was already being negotiated, but doing it on American terms with American military force? The Venezuelan military's response suggests they're betting on the latter. They're playing a careful game. Activate the armed forces, declare a state of emergency, show resistance, but also signal willingness to cooperate. Maintain the regime's structure while swapping out the most problematic figure. Trump says the U.S. will run Venezuela until a proper transition takes place. Venezuela's military says they're defending sovereignty and following their constitution. Both things are happening simultaneously in this strange parallel reality where two sides are telling completely different stories about the same events. What happens next? That depends on whether the Venezuelan military can hold this precarious position. Defiant enough to maintain legitimacy at home, cooperative enough to avoid further U.S. military action. With national defense plans activated and both Rodriguez and Padrino Lopez at the center of the response, Venezuela's military is making its bet that it can navigate this crisis without the country collapsing into chaos. The real question is whether Trump's administration will accept this arrangement or whether they're planning further operations to reshape Venezuela more dramatically. As of right now, January 6, 2026, the Venezuelan military has made its move. The regime has adapted, and the standoff continues.